Well, today, we're going to continue our series on the science of mind, the 10 core concepts. Today, we're going to be looking at core concept number 2, the triune nature. You see, core concepts are the basic theories of how the universe works. We'll look at these core concepts from both the divine aspect, the universal aspect, as well as the human perspective, because they're focusing at both the macro level, the divine level, and the micro level, the human level. And I think it's real important that we understand it from both levels so that we can see how do these concepts work? How do they interact with us in our life? And so in the core concept, the triune nature, we're going to look at this from the universal perspective. God, the universe, is triune or threefold in nature, having three aspects or modes of being within the one: spirit, soul, and body. Spirit, soul, and body. Spirit, soul, and body. And God is the macrocosm. The macrocosm meaning the allness, nothing bigger. This is the ultimate. So with God as spirit, it is universal mind in conscious mode. God as spirit is love, it's self-knowing, it's spontaneous, it's originating, it's reasoning, it's directing, it's exercising will, volition, and choice. In other words, it's the creative spark. It's the creative force. It's the first cause. It is the divine idea. It is that which it has imagined, and it creates an idea of it, and it knows this idea for itself. So strictly speaking, the term spirit means God in the conscious mode, but it's frequently used as a synonym for the whole of God. But we're not talking about the whole of God. We're talking about, when we're saying spirit here, we're saying the conscious mode of God, that aspect of God that thinks. God as the soul is universal mind in the subjective mode. God as soul is the universal subjective, sometimes called universal law or creative medium. It has no volition of its own. It manifests impersonally the directives implanted by spirit. In other words, think of it this way. The soul aspect of us has no volition. It has no judgment. It simply responds to the spirit. It responds to the objective nature. It responds to the spirit side of God. All it does is respond. In one sense, the soul is all of the unformed substance or energy from which all forms emerge. In another sense, it is the reservoir of all race memory and is often called race consciousness. So there's a couple key things I want to unpack here. The soul aspect of God is where everything gets created. All the unformed substance, unformed energy is there. The soul now knows how to take what the spirit has declared, and it knows how to take it and create out of it this unformed substance. So it's not the conscious mind, it is the unconscious mind. So as it's also part of the unconscious mind, there's a second element here, and that it is the storehouse of all memory. Everything that has ever been thought, spoken, acted upon, whatever, is stored here. And this is often called race consciousness. In other words, the human race consciousness, the consciousness of the human race from the beginning of eternity. Everything exists within this soul medium. After we've got spirit, soul, God as body is the physical universe. All the forms it contains, all visible manifestations of invisible cause. Form is always an effect. It is never a cause. The easiest way to define this is that, let's break it down. Spirit, seed, soul, soil, body, plant. The seed is planted in the soil creates. The soil, when a seed is planted, an apricot seed, does not produce a plum tree. It produces an apricot tree. The soil only gives what is planted in it. This is at the universal level. This is at the divine level. So let's break it down and let's now switch this and let's go to the human level. Each human being is in a projection of God in microcosm. Thus, it is endowed with the triune nature of God and expresses that nature in all three aspects or modes of his or her being, spirit, soul, and body. So in other words, we have spirit, conscious mind. Conscious mind thinks, it creates a thought. That thought then is implanted into the universal mind. Now, we don't have an individual universal mind. We're using the full universal mind. So our conscious mind is not the full consciousness of spirit. We only have a part of that. We're only partially aware of what's conscious. But what we take as consciousness, plant that in the universal, that will demonstrate in our physical life. My conscious mind is universal spirit individualized as my spirit. It is a source of my intellect, my spontaneity, my capacity to love, to reason, to originate, to choose, and to take charge of my life. When we become aware, we realize we have a conscious mind, and how we direct that conscious mind determines the experience we have in human form. It is our ability to choose. But if we're not using that conscious mind, it's very difficult. We won't make a choice. We'll keep living Groundhog Day after Groundhog Day. The human subjective mind performs within me all the roles of the universal subjective mind in the cosmos. In reality, my subjective mind merges with the universal subjective. It really doesn't merge. It's a part of the universal. Thus, I am an individualized expression of God at the point of my conscious perception. Each of us is an individualization of the one. My physical body is the vehicle through which I function in the physical universe. With my human senses and emotions, I experience the events and conditions of the world of affairs. These experiences are effects and subject to conscious change. It allows you to experience that which you put into creative form. Because why be in human form if you can't experience what you're creating? That's why there will always be contrast in human form. Because without contrast, there's no possible way for you to experience the creation in front of you. There's no such thing as bad creation. There's only creation and how we experience it. The manifest universe is the body of God. It is the logical and necessary outcome of the infinite self-knowingness of God. For God to self-know itself, it has to have the body, which is the universe. For us to to self-know ourselves, we have to have a body and experience to be self-aware. The triune nature is both universal and it's human. It helps us to see the beauty, the allness from the perspective of how magnificent life is.